Welcome to another episode of ACX University. I'm Emily Curran, and if you've been paying attention to the audiobook industry for the last few years, you know it's growing like crazy. And not only by volume, creators across many diverse backgrounds have been expanding the traditional definition of the audiobook, taking audio storytelling to new heights and finding new creative ways to bring a story to life with the power of the human voice. Joining me here today are the creative minds behind one such groundbreaking endeavor. From Audie-nominated project Lustily Ever After, the audiobook musical, we have Stephanie Bentley, Miranda Ray, Henry Kaiser, Carolyn Jania, and Aaron Wilson. Hi, and welcome to ACX University.
Hi, so happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for joining me. So if you don't mind, I'd love for you all to introduce yourselves and tell our audience a little bit about your background and what your role in this project was.
I'm Stephanie Bentley, and I was the creator and composer of Lustily Ever After, the audiobook musical. My background is in acting and narrating. So I was in musical improv for a long time with some of these people, and making up songs on the spot, and also narrating lots of romance novels. So the two just naturally came together.
I'm Miranda Ray. I was the book writer, and I helped outline after I received the songs from Stephanie. I worked for 5 years as an erotic ghostwriter, and I'm usually in and out of theaters also doing all sorts of things. This year I was a front of house manager for all of a month before everything shut down. And now I actually adapt radio plays for our theater. So, Emily, we have love of radio in common, I think.
I am a composer, and I also do a lot of music direction, like comedy music direction. That's how I met, I guess, every one of these people here doing musical improv. So I have a background in like classical composition and film scoring and like just general music production. And so Stephanie brought this to me, and I thought it was an awesome idea. I think Stephanie is like one of the smartest, funniest people I've ever met. So I was like, oh, well, it should be awesome. Yeah. And so here I am.
Yes, I'm Carolyn Jania, and I played Kim. And my background is in comedy music as well, and acting and narrating. And Stephanie and I actually met many, many years ago in a restaurant, but it turns out we had improv and music in common. And so we've been friends a while now, and I was so honored when she brought me on board.
Hi, I'm Henry Kaiser. I do comedy. I think that's my main thing, but I also grew up with music as my other best friend. So I just feel like, the marriage of those two things came together really nicely for this, because Stephanie and I met through musical improv, Aaron and I met through musical improv, and that vibe, that creative vibe sort of is what I think it's what made you call me, right, Stephanie? But yeah, I love comedy and I love music. So the fact that they both came together in this book was pretty awesome. And I've also been doing voices my whole life. So I feel like, why not throw them all together? That's what got me here, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it really seems just like the perfect marriage of all of these very, very diverse talents. So this project in itself is fairly unique. I think it's the first audiobook musical that I've ever heard of. And I was hoping that you could start off by telling us a little bit about where the inspiration for this project came from, and really like how the spark started and then how it came to be.
Yeah, well, it is the first audiobook musical for adults. There's another musical that had been, I think it won an Audie the year before, that was for children. So the format has been done sort of in that area, but nothing like for adults only. So this is kind of the first one of those, which is very exciting. And like I said, I was doing musical improv at night with Aaron and Henry, and making up songs. If people don't know what musical improv is, it's basically we have a half an hour to make up an entire musical. And throughout that time, we just make up a bunch of different songs about what's going on with the characters. And so that really helped get me into the frame of mind of just making up songs really quickly. And then I would go to work every day and I would read this, steamy stuff over and over again, that just, some of it was like hilarious and some of it was so expected and predictable and some of it was so sweet. And I just was like, I got to write something for these characters. And so I did start off thinking it was going to be a stage show, started writing some of these songs. And then a friend of mine suggested, why don't I do it in audiobook format? And the reason she did that, actually, now that I'm remembering, is because I asked her to play the lead. And she said, this is your show, you should play the lead. And I thought, oh, I'm not right for it, visually. And she said, well, just do it in audio. So that was what happened. Which is really sort of the freedom of this format, right? Is that you get to like play with the human voice and explore sort of the bounds of what's possible without having to rely on the consumer's like visual impressions, Totally.
So how is this audiobook musical structured? Is there a narrator, or do the characters themselves tell their own story? And how many songs are in it in total?
So it's a multicast, first-person narration, narrated by the heroine who I get to play because it's an audio. So I narrate all the chapters, and then the characters, played by Henry and Carolyn, narrate their own dialogue and obviously their songs. There are 20 songs throughout, and it's only a 2.5-hour musical. So there are a lot of songs per word count.
Wow. So you started off by writing the songs, you said, and then the project went to Miranda next. And Miranda, you were in charge of writing like the actual story that sort of wove all of the songs together. And how'd you go about like writing a story around a group of songs?
It was actually really fun because, yes, we started with an outline and I just kind of pieced all the songs. I think Stephanie sent them to me in the order she thought they would go in the show. So she kind of had the plot arc in mind. And then we worked out an outline. I think we moved a few songs around, and then I just started writing. And oftentimes I don't write in order. So I would usually just whatever was inspiring me that day, I would write that scene. And yeah, it was a strange process. It was difficult because I wasn't there with her to work on it.
Oh, interesting. So you're sort of like you're working on these pieces separately and then just sort of like coming together to check your progress?
Yes, I was actually living on a ship at the time, so that made it even harder.
Cool. And then, Erin, how did you get involved? And what was the process like for composing the music for an audiobook musical? And how is that different from like composing it for a stage musical?
Well, actually, there's a lot of different ways that a stage musical could come together. I'm working on a stage musical right now where basically the writer's sending me like demos and I'm kind of like just producing / orchestrating them. My favorite way is like to have everybody just be in a room and just hash out all the songs. But because I have 2 young children, and so does Stephanie,
So do I.
it made it that wasn't possible this time. So what Stephanie did is she sent me some a cappella demos that she had of like melodic, basically. I mean, she had really clear melodic ideas and also kind of production ideas. I think these are all kind of styled in the 90s, like 90s pop, which was great for me because it kind of gave me definite parameters to work under. And I got to try to mimic a lot of our favorite pop songs from the 90s or production styles, pop production styles from the 90s. Mm-hmm. So she sent me these really clear melodic ideas, and then I just kind of wrote the music around that based on the style that she had the idea, the idea she had for the style of the songs, and just kind of, hacked away at them, kind of one by one. I had no idea what what it was supposed to sound like, in the end. But it's always fun writing songs for me. Any kind of form of collaboration of writing songs is really fun for me. So I was I was like on board, immediately for that. So
with stage musicals, they're like play to the rafters. There's like big
Right.
and flashy and over the top. And when you're composing music for something that's a bit more intimate, like it's going to be in somebody's ears, did you have to take that into account at all with the composition?
Yes and no. Because the songs are so stylized, I kind of play to the style of the song. So a big part of what I was doing was trying to make the songs sound as close to like a real song as possible, not like a comedy song or not like necessarily a musical, so like a song for a musical. I wanted to make them sound like, if this is like inspired by Britney Spears, like I want it to sound like Britney Spears, and kind of let like the comedy kind of play out from that. The fact that this is like kind of a ridiculous song, or like a ridiculous premise, put into a Britney Spears song, and so I wasn't really, kind of thinking about, oh, this has to be musical. Now, there are some songs in there that are kind of written in kind of classic American musical theater style. And that was really fun to do too, because then you get to really think about, playing to the rafters. So that, that was what was fun about this project, was that, it did kind of cover this wide, even though it was like, oh, this is kind of like 90s type songs, but I did get to like kind of like stretch out and do some more conventional, musical sounding pieces as well.
That sounds like so much fun.
Of course.
Emily, can I answer something on that playing to the rafters thing?
Yeah, please, absolutely. I am actually really interested in like hearing how that works out from an acting perspective too.
Well, I was going to say, that the cool thing about it for me is that I'm sure the other voice actors on this can identify with this in some way too. Like, there are certain things that I cannot sing to the rafters because, like I do falsetto in this a couple times. I can't sing that without a mic to like a 500-seat theater, or a 100-seat theater. I might be able to pull it off, but like I was able to have more. I don't know if the word dynamic range in my voice or whatever, but I was able to do more things with my voice because of the format of and the medium of an audiobook / recorded musical that I wouldn't have been able to do had it been a stage show. And also we got to play more than one character, which was fun because, I could play the French guy while also playing Tristan. So yeah, I just loved that gift because my range may be this on stage, but I can go this much higher and this much lower when I have like an amazing mic at Stephanie's home studio.
Right.
So that was a really fun aspect.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that was a benefit of this format as opposed to live performance, is that you can pick up on the subtleties, like Stephanie wrote these characters so clearly. And so it was nice to be able to get in the booth and, do something a little softer, and like more, I don't know, just more dynamic, as Henry said. And it's not lost. It's not lost if you're sitting in the back row, it was something that was really fun to play with.
Yeah.
I'll just add in with the writing part of it, because you're right. Like in a stage show, you have these big numbers and there's costumes and there's lighting and there's all these elements to try to get you to an emotional place. And I think what we had to do for this was write the lyrics to be really like surprising and really push the envelope and kind of cross the line a little bit so that we could get to those emotional places, And so, for instance, with the song that's on the sample on the Audible page, that song ends with both characters climaxing in the song. So it's like that, maybe has never happened before and anywhere. I don't know, like in a song.
Think so. Yeah.
And so, like exploring the build with that, because she wants him to talk dirty to her. And so he starts with traditional dirty talk. And then we find out that what she really wants to do with her hand is get a ring put on it, and she doesn't really want to be compared to a sunset, but she does want to be compared to his current other women in his life and know that she's better looking than that or whatever. And so it's like we do this build until we get to the point where it makes sense for the characters to finally, get what they need in that song.
One other thing,
as it were.
one other thing I love about this is that, similar to radio plays and any audio only format, you know, in improv and comedy, when it's staged or video, the rule is show, don't tell. But in this, we can't show. We have to show through like our actions within the script and within the music. So I don't know. It was a very cool thing, because I almost feel like it made us have to work harder to get the story across. But when it worked, it was super fun and rewarding. You know, those moments of like, oh wow, I didn't think we'd be able to describe that so well. Or like Miranda's writing in some of like the scene where they're looking out at the skyline, and he does something very nice for her as a gesture of love for her. But like the way, and I don't want to give it away, but like the way it's described helps paint that picture. In improv, it's called scene painting, but in this, it would be just exposition, or what would you say, Stephanie? I don't know the right word. Or Miranda,
I mean,
what do
I
you
think we should ask Miranda.
Yeah.
Purple prose.
Yeah,
It was really fun.
writing.
Purple prose. Because I got
It's
to,
so
I mean,
funny.
that was part of the enjoyable part of writing, is you get to kind of unleash and break all the rules you're taught in school to not like go 110% one way. And we just did it anyway. The same goes for the tropes. Like when I was writing, obviously we tried to hit every possible trope we could think of in the genre. And now, of course, a couple years later, there's 100 new ones. But it was really fun to try and take all those tropes to their natural, like, final stage. So that's why I think the book still works almost as a romance novel. It's still got everything that we seek in those kinds of books.
And
Yeah.
And
one of
I like laugh out loud funny. I haven't met you in person, and I just need to tell you, it is so funny. Oh, and I like knew what was happening in the story, and I was still laughing out loud. So good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's hysterical. It really is. Henry, you were going to say something?
So we all the musical improvisers in this 6-panel discussion, we all met through a good friend, Tara Copeland, who teaches musical improv all around LA and now remotely, I believe. But one of the things in that is that, you know, musicals are what I've been told, even in writing, whether it's improvised or written musical, it's always you sing when there's so much emotion that you can't help but do anything but that. And so even what Miranda's saying is like going 110% as far as the writing goes, going 110% as far as the songs getting to climactic moments. All of that fits so well within the genre of a musical. Like, I love you so much, I need to sing about it, you know, and I think that, yeah, it sort of played in well to that 110% across the board vibe.
So I did want to get into a little bit more of the conversation around the comedy here, because the musical is extremely funny, but it's also like really like steamy and real. It works. Like it's still like a romance novel. And one of the things that I think is really impressive is how well this like strikes this balance of being like engaging and funny and romantic, and you know, it's like bringing all of these things together and then adding music into one production strikes me as this really ambitious thing, and a really like you know, a really big risk to take in some ways. So I'm curious, like, as you're pulling this together, like, how do you strike that balance? I mean, both as a writer and as a performer, and then also as a composer, like, how are you striking this balance between funny and sexy, so that you nail them both?
I'd love to try answering at least the first part of that.
Yeah.
And Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like in a very early conversation we talked about obviously wanting to do a send up of the world we were both inhabiting at that time as an erotic writer and as an erotic narrator. But we also really wanted to honor and celebrate the people who enjoy those books. So that was always in the back of my mind, probably from the first, to make sure as we make fun, we are bringing people in on the joke, because romantic readers are discerning. They're discerning readers, and they know the tropes they love. They understand that those tropes are repeated. So that was my goal, at least.
I think that's such a good point, Miranda, because this is our life, right? We do romance. This is what we do and we love it. And for me, it was a lot more about like the skit, the campfire skit at the end of camp, where you all get together and you're like, oh, there's Mr. Whoever ringing the bell again. Like, we all know that, like that was what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be us all getting together and laughing about the things that we enjoy and that we recognize. And I think Miranda was flawless at that, being both hilarious and also very well versed in the archetypes and the tropes of all the romance stuff.
I add one more thing, because I get so excited about these things. The other cool thing, like I think you might have said it, Emily, when I brought up the musicals, tightening everything and there being no other place for things to go. Like, romance novels are like, it's the thing of fantasy starts when you can't do anything else but imagine that beautiful thing where, I don't know, I'm not going to ruin plots in this, but where she turns into an ice, well, now I'm doing Frozen, turns into an ice princess and to a giant man. And they live happily ever after. It's that heightening within the fantasy side of romance novels and the musicals, where it fits nicely. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, like from the people that do more romance novel type stuff, any adult can enjoy it because it has it is such a great confluence of comedy, music, erotic fiction tropes, romance novels, etc. I just feel like it does fit for anyone who's willing to tune in.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I really love that idea of like fantasy begins when reality has nowhere else to go. That is so relatable to audiobooks too, because like it is a space where like fantasy can reign. In a way that like it can't with like visual mediums, because it's all like what you can put in the listener's head. And that like just leaves such a much bigger space for fantasy. So I'm curious a little bit more from the voice actors, like how you're striking that balance between comedy and like, sexiness.
I think I touched on this earlier, but from the songs and the writing, the characters were so clear to me. And it was so fun to be able to get in there and really just do my best to do justice to what was written, And I think my favorite thing about being an actor that does audiobooks and being a narrator and voiceover performer, I can play things that I wouldn't be able to play otherwise, like I can be this kind of like nerdy, sad sidekick girl that and get to inhabit that with my voice. And that was like the most liberating thing, because I saw it so clearly. I know that I may not represent that character physically, but to be able to get in the booth and kind of do her.
I love earnest music or acting in that then has a twist, or enough of a twist to get the comedy in there. The first song that I ever wrote with Aaron was an audition song for a group I'm in. And the song was about a guy, this is insane, but it was about a guy whose family was taken away or killed by a tornado, and it was his revenge song against the tornado years later. It's all fantasy, right?
I love it.
I wrote that song as if it was from Les Mis or something, right? Like, I think the opening was like, you thought you recorded, like this type of like Andy Patinkin level intenseness or intensity. Cut both of those words out. It won't make any sense. But I think that's what I've been wanting to do my whole life. Like my brother's an opera singer, so he gets the earnest thing. I'm a comedian, so I get to do the earnest thing and twist it just a little bit or a little bit, if depending on the song you listen to from the show, to an extent that I think it can be really fun and really funny. Just the more seriously you take it, the funnier it ends up being, which is why some of the best dramatic actors of our time end up being some of the best comedians and vice versa.
Yeah. Can I add to what Henry said?
Please, yeah.
I'm not a voice actor, obviously, but my favorite comedies are probably the ones where the characters don't realize they're in a comedy, like Airplane and stuff like that. And I think we got some actors that really pulled that off on this project.
Totally. It was always intended to be like The Naked Gun or like Airplane or Hot Shots, one of those. And I'll just say from a songwriting standpoint, there's a few really sweet songs in there. Kim, who's the best friend, and I have this song that is like a West Coast gangsta rap about how much it's called The Girl Is Mine. And it's modeled after the Brandy and Monica song, The Boy Is Mine. But it's like, no, the girl is mine, like we're best friends. And she has another really sweet song later on when she feels like she's been rejected. And, like there's really authentic, tender songs in there that I think make the comedy pop so much more because they do have real investments in each other.
Yeah, in a lot of ways that I kind of felt like I had the easiest job in that way because I didn't have to really think about how to make a song funny. I tried to make the songs as as genuine and like kind of true to style or whatever is possible because I knew like the funny would come out of that, like how like Henry and Steffi were saying, like that you play into that the earnestness and like you sing earnestly about about something ridiculous and it's it's funny. In musical improv, a lot of times I get called upon to do like parody songs, and it's like my least favorite thing to do because it's just like to me it's just like people, it's like trying to make something funny by like adding like weird voices or like doing it it doesn't need that. It doesn't need all we could come up with something funny by just really kind of playing to like the emotional core of it, like the true emotional core of it, and just but sing about tornadoes instead. So like that's kind of how I thought about this too.
Yeah. Aaron, though, if I may, you incorporate comedy in your compositions, I feel, being familiar with your music and the music in this show.
Right. I do. I mean, all right. So I think the best way for me to do that is really specific referencing. Like, so, at a certain, at the right moment, you can make a reference that people can kind of like zero in on, like, this is where we are. And like that, comedy can come out of that a lot of times. And that was, that's kind of what a lot of this musical is like, there's the gangster rap thing, so we can, hear these two women doing like a gangster rap about how they met, so, like very specific, like, very specific musical references, I think, lend themselves to that,
And Aaron is a genius, just flat out, hands down, like absolute genius. Song on the web. Here, it's under basically talking most of the time, but you'll hear like tiny little sound effects. I think there's like a boing sound that he puts in there that I didn't even hear it for the first 3 times. And I listened to it. I was like, what? He knows. He knows what to do.
I did that. I broke my own rule there, but because like, that was one of the times like, okay, well, this clearly needs a vibra slap or whatever, whatever that boing, whatever that instrument is. There's it's true, but you pick your spots, and like that's probably why I feel like that stands out there, for that reason.
With Aaron and the other, like if I had my top 4 in my head of the musical accompanists that I've ever worked with, Aaron is in that top 4. And what they all do, what they all have in common, is that instead of cribbing an entire song or genre, they flourish within that song or genre. Also, Aaron, I think, is a king of adding a flourish or a homage to another genre song or reference, instead of just being like, I'm gonna play Aladdin. He'll play something totally different from Aladdin. Let's say it's two people falling in love at a coffee shop, but he wants it to feel like the I Can Show You the World song. He'll play something totally different, but in the bridge, he'll throw in like a dun, da, 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 which is not even that song. That's Joel. But Aaron, I think that's your thing, right? That I love when you do that type of stuff.
Yeah, right. It's like, in case, for anybody that didn't catch it, this is what this is, and then like I'll put that in there, just to bring everybody along. But once you get it, you don't have to hear the whole Under the Sea song to know that this is in the style of that. So that's kind of how I think about it.
That's so cool. It kind of mirrors this referencing of like tropes in the romance genre that like the writing does. The musical composition like mirrors these tropes in music.
Yeah.
And like that's where the comedy comes from in both places. Yeah. And
Right.
I did want to ask a little bit about the sound effect thing, or just like about putting any, like, I don't know, where if there's like musical transitions between songs and talking, like just like how that works. And one of the things that we tell people is not to go like way over the top and not to like have all of that stuff competing with the narration, but having it complement the narration and kind of add to that. So I would be interested to hear if you can speak to that at all, how you strike that balance.
I can speak to that as a narrator, because when I was starting out on ACX, sometimes the sci-fi books would ask for some music or sound effects, and I would usually just put them at the beginning and the ends of chapters. And I found that to be a really good balance, where it's not interfering with the narration, but it still gives you a little bit more of a flavor, or sets the mood, or sets the tone. And so with this one specifically, what we did do is we had all the chapter titles sung in the style of En Vogue. So that way, you're not listening to a regular audiobook, like from the very beginning, it's like prologue, you get in the mood, and then you're into the narration and then into the songs. So
yeah.
It's so smart too. It's such a perfect.
Yeah, that works. That worked great. Because it's pretty light on just sound design in general, I think, and I think that works for this. Overall.
So moving on a little bit to like the more technical production side of things, what was the process like for recording this audiobook? Like recording the music and then recording the voices. Are you doing this all together? Or if not, like how are you actually pulling off the technical part of this?
So everybody recorded in my home studio. Separately. I don't think we were ever together. Is that right, Henry and Carolyn?
I was never with Henry, but you and I hopped in the booth for some things together.
I think we did do that.
Yeah, and I think, Stephanie, like, I don't know if we were ever in the booth together, but like you'd be outside the booth and you'd help me know, like, because some of the songs we weren't sure of how to end things. So like that's quite fun to be able to collaborate. That's one where I think it would have been really hard to do it remotely. Like I could literally look at Stephanie through the window and be like, okay, so point at me because it's such a weird song with 5 voices or 3 voices. Let's nail this. And it was awesome to be able to do it that way, I think. And also Stephanie had way better a studio than I imagined. I didn't know what she had. So I brought my own Yeti mic, which is nothing compared to what she has. And I'm like, I'll put it in my backpack. Because I haven't really done this before. Like, let's just.
And Stephanie really encouraged a lot of improvisation. She knew our backgrounds and wanted us to add flourishes and really just let us go wild. But I did have to be aware of constantly blowing out that sound for poor Aaron, who had to pull me back for sure. He was just red. Oh, I gotta tone it down.
Yeah,
Carolyn's. Yeah, Jane is powerful. You gotta watch out. Yeah, sure.
The cool thing was we were presented with an amazing story and amazing songs, and then we got to do one-liners here and there. I got to be a little more French because they needed a French guy, but just having a blast with that. And also knowing that like Stephanie could either, because she's great at not only writing, singing, acting, she also, I think you edited it, right? The book?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh, so Stephanie also knows how to edit this stuff. So if I throw something weird in and it's too weird, she can always just take a different take. And if I do something a little off tempo for comedic reasons or comedic fun, Stephanie can re-record her. Like she basically said, we might end up having to re-record based on tempo or whatever, but she gave us carte and that was, thank you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys are pros. I mean, I couldn't be luckier, really.
Another one.
So when you're putting this all together from like an editing and producing and mastering perspective, there's a lot of competing elements that you're working with here, that if they're not really brought together in perfect harmony could, which is like one of the things that we warn people about when they're adding in other elements, soundscaping and music to an audiobook. How do you like strike that production balance? And what are you looking to highlight?
I mean, definitely the biggest challenge was just the songs, getting the songs and all the character voices to match levels. Aaron graciously mastered the songs for us. So that was a huge task that he undertook, going above and beyond. And so I had those all the same levels. And then it was just a matter of kind of going through and really making sure that everybody was at the same level with the dialogue because it was so intermittent. And I wanted to make sure everything could be heard. But that was a little bit of a challenge because this was a labor of love. And so I was doing it myself. I have 2 little kids. And so it did take a long time for me to get through everything, but it was worth it.
So bringing this to sort of like wrapping it up, when it's all finished, you have this, incredible, really like multi-layered, multifaceted audio project. How do you get it out there? What is your marketing strategy? And are you, because you're doing this yourself, I assume, as like an independently published creator, how are you like leveraging all of the unique aspects of this project to like market it and get it in front of the right people?
Well, I did work with a couple of publicists when we released the book, and we got some really great press coverage in abc7.com and some great reviews from Audiophile magazine and other places. And I think that really helped to get the word out there. And then we were starting a live in concert tour kind of a thing. We actually did a live show at Upright Citizens Brigade in Los Angeles. And we had another one scheduled for Hotel Cafe for the week that everything had to shut down. So we didn't get to live out our tour dreams, but that was another really cool way of getting the word out there. And then, in terms of the future of the project, I think it has incredible development potential. I have a producer that is interested in possibly shopping it around as a show. So I'm working on a pitch document for her. And, of course, I would die to do it again on stage if we ever get the chance. I think it's so much fun to do it live and just have the audience there, and do the reading. That's the other thing that's really cool is that we read from the book and did like a abbreviated version of it for a 1-hour version. And it was so much fun. So yeah, that's what we did. That's what I did.
That's such a fantastic idea from like a marketing perspective. If you have this incredible full cast for an audiobook, doing a live reading as like a way of promoting the project, because people, it's almost like seeing behind the scenes. And I feel like, readers and listeners love to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was definitely different. I think some people came in and did not know what to expect. And I think that's true of the project in general. I think it's a big swing and people love it and they get it. Or, they don't. Like one of the things Miranda did so well is she really did layer in those inside jokes. And so there's so many things that anybody, the average person, would just automatically understand. And then there's like that layer underneath it where she says, I think one of my favorites is that Tristan is the captain of the soccer club, but he's also the captain of the motorcycle club or whatever. It's like nobody that doesn't read romance, that's weird. What's a motorcycle club? Like, I know what a motorcycle club is, and that's just like right there, right underneath the surface so that everybody can enjoy it.
There's this one really neat thing that you guys keep hitting on, I think, sort of peripherally, which is like that touches on the idea of like the risk of this project, because it is such a unique project and it is trying to bring so many things together that it's a risk. But one of the things that really makes it so successful is like almost like running full force at that risk and like committing 100%, because it's like what you said, Stephanie, like if the reason why this works is to really like go all in on those inside jokes and like go all in on like the blowing up the tropes to make them as big as they can be. And like I think that there's something in that all authors and producers can really take away, which is that like when you're faced with the risk of like, who is this going to appeal to, you figure out who it's going to appeal to and really go hard for them. And instead of trying to like appeal broadly to everybody, like know who your audience is and really like go in for them like 110%.
Absolutely. And I think we did do that. I mean, Miranda, like I keep saying, is just such an incredible find. And I just couldn't believe everything she brought to the table, from being an erotica ghostwriter and also just being so naturally hilarious. Every time she would send me pages, I was like, oh, this is amazing. I just couldn't even stand how funny it was, but also how accurate it was. And I knew, this was the other thing that I wanted to say, is that this was such a collaboration. I had this idea because I do musicals and I do audiobooks. I was like, let's do this and this will be fun. But then Miranda comes in and she's got all these other amazing ideas. And it's like, yes, no, that's amazing. And then Henry comes in and he's improvising things that I've never thought of. And it's like, yes, that. And then Aaron sends me a track and it's like, oh yeah, that. Carolyn comes in and she's got her take on the character. And it's like, oh, I couldn't have seen how this was going to end up, because everybody who came to the project had such specific skills and really gave their all and really were all into it. Like you said, like just giving 110%, and made this into something so special and so big and so different that that's the only way it could be. It could only exist as a huge swing and a one of a kind. And if you love it, you love it. And if you don't, that's okay. It's not for you. It's not for everyone.
Part of why we brought so much to the table was because we knew wasn't there some story of you walking one kid in a stroller, another one on the hip, and recording a song into a voice memo? Like, this was a labor of love for you. You worked so hard, and I think all of us can say that we just wanted to bring the best to the table for you because you worked your butt off.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
That is important, I think, to get the message out there, is that this musical was written with one kid in the stroller and one on the hip. So this was not like a thing that I sat down and did one day or several days. This was totally in between parts of life. And it really inspired me to believe that people can really do anything, if they're excited about it. And, writing these songs was so exciting to me. It felt like being in love, like you were just sort of thinking about it all day and humming it all day and like, like I was just sort of in love with it. So it really just became a part of my life. And I was sad when it was done, but then it was so exciting to move into the next stage of the actual production, and to have it now be what it is like an unbelievable blessing.
It's been a blast, and I'm excited. Whatever happens next, I'm down. And I don't know. I said this to someone earlier, but like this has to do just with, I think most of us are live performers, and Miranda works in theater as well. Like, you miss doing live theater, so you're willing, that swinging for the fences thing applies even more right now, because it's like, well, I can't do a live show where I do my weird, Andre the medium character, so I will just do something on Zoom, but go swing just as big. Or like Miranda texted me the other day and was like, can you do a voice for like a radio play thing? I was like, sure, just because I think it's a time to just explore some of these creative options and have a blast with it.
I do want to add to that, like when this was incepted and it was like, wow, this could be the first audiobook musical for adults, I had thought everything had been done before. I didn't think there was anything left to do, And so this was such a cool, like we keep talking about, Emily, like the audio world is such a new frontier where people really can push that envelope and create anything that they can imagine.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us. This was an incredible conversation. I hope that everyone who's watching this feels inspired to get out there and really take on a project that is a little bit of a risk, and do something different and that pushes the bounds of what's been done before. And really expands audio storytelling into something new, even if they're not a singer or a composer, playing to whatever strengths they have, and really tackling that big, ambitious, super risky project that they've always wanted to do.
Me too. I can't wait to hear what comes out.
Yeah, me too. Right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much for having us. This is an incredible opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.